I haven't done a lot of live stuff because I did some live stuff, and then the footage died on the way to YouTube. But I figure I'm going to be here for a while doing what I'm doing right here. So for anybody that wonders what a flipping idiot is flipping, it's a 9-drawer MCM black walnut this time, where somebody put adhesive flooring tile on the top. There's a lot of glue, and I have a number of utensils here. I have some, I think these came from Rockler. They are a fancy stainless steel pry bar used for molding. They're pretty sharp. And so the plan was to maybe team them up so I can kind of get an edge under here and then pry it up. The problem is this is, I mean, it's still stuck on, and so the chisel is doing the best job. This is a Wood River chisel. It's the house brand from Woodcraft. Super handy tool. I need to sharpen it. I'm going to do a sharpening video somewhere in the near future. But it has this ability to lay flat with the handle up here, so I can work it into something like this. And as you can see, it's a nice flat area too. People call it registering. It sits flat. If I need to, I can get in there. If I think I need to pry it, I can put this underneath and get some lift. And then this I just bought. Found it for $4 at the Habitat for Humanity Restore. And so I felt destiny. The universe was telling me that this needs to happen. And like the Greek legends of old, where Zeus would send his kids, his surprise offspring, that he would send them magical weapons to protect them from magical creatures, so they could become legends. Pretty fun stuff if you're not familiar with it. Hercules, everybody knows who Hercules is, sort of. Although there's been a lot of bad movies made about Hercules. All right, so here's one issue. There's a lot of buildup there, and I'm not sure how, I am really not sure how strong product would have to be to get that off there. I might need to go get a razor blade so I can keep doing work with the chisel. It's coming off so far pretty cleanly, although I have no idea if there's any surprises. That's why it's live. I have no idea if there's like somebody took an ice skate and with a toe kick and dragged it across the grandma's dresser here, or if this was just a fun way to dress up a boring old brown dresser that somebody got from their relatives. Maybe grandma picked a cool dresser out of the mid-century modern catalog in the 60s and then fell overboard on it. I don't know. Maybe she was eaten by a shark, or simply she got married and she had found a guy that had even nicer mid-century modern stuff. Let's go with the happy story. But anyways, let's say her kids got the furniture, and in the 70s they thought, hey, let's do what everybody else is doing and let's put really sticky tile on top. Or maybe they thought this would protect it because they're going to put it in their kids' room. And that way, if the kids are doing arts and crafts, they have a nice durable surface that will be stuck on here for the next 300 years. With some, I did a little bit of tilting there with the chisel. Shouldn't do that. As you can see, the chisel's taking a beating here. But I don't know, at some point people think, hey, it's a really good idea to protect a dresser top. And, at some point people thought it was a good idea to do the, some of the dressers with a big chunk of glass. Let's see, am I still in frame? Anybody watching? Oh, 11 people are watching. Wow. I tell you to get a membership, but I don't do this every week. I'm doing it right now. So I am not just doing this, although there is kind of a lot riding on this this particular dresser, because it's kind of the slow part of the year. Flipping stuff and making money on flipping things is seasonal, at least where I'm at. People put out all this stuff. And like I said, it tends to be, at least for sure in my house, it was my mom driving the decisions. So it's the aesthetic of the ladies, and it's still, even for me, I don't get to choose my own paint colors at home because I am married. But it was probably grandma's idea to go out, or great grandma's maybe, to go out and get some cool furniture. All grandpa worried about was fishing, bowling, and working at the factory. This is really sticky. I was thinking about going to even just the bathroom here at my rental place and getting some soap to help it slide around. But I think I'm going to get a squeeze bottle if I can't get through this effectively. Here was my thought. If I can get across here, that would be kind of a big deal. It's actually maybe even a little easier to pop this stuff because the oxygen gets in here and dries out the adhesive. And so the bond is a little bit more brittle. So you can hear it when it pops. Out here, the glue is still very, still got a lot of softness. And so it's, you're going to feel it's really tacky. The one thing I know that's happening is that the finish is probably a shellac finish on a dresser this old. I got to tell you, it is tough to tell if I'm digging into the dresser because, I mean, the adhesive is just, like I said, still so tacky that my chisel is basically just getting glued to the top of this thing. So in here, it's, as you can see, the adhesive is super live. If I was at home, I would just go grab some denatured alcohol, well, not denatured alcohol, some mineral spirits. That and, a heat gun, but I don't have access to that here at my space. And so I wanted to see what it would take. I could probably smuggle in some Goo Gone, and that would at least, that and a razor blade would help me clear this. And then even something here to help it float, or maybe even just some mineral oil to reduce the friction, because I'm having trouble wiggling the blade under here. So I'm going to probably concentrate fire on the edge. Hello to everybody. I just checked to see what people are saying. Oh, man. Oh, I like that. I just figured out Grandma got run over by a reindeer. Yeah. Usually it's the grandmas all. I used to work with photographers. Used to have it would be the grandmas all sitting around knitting and smiling, and I don't know. Bill Burr's a funny guy, whether you like his comedy or not. But he made a good point that it's the ladies that are sitting around. They're done raising the kids and they're hanging out and they're happy and they got their friends, and it's the guy that's been, I don't know, working on a farm, getting up at 4:30 in the morning, and then driving a tractor and going to war back then and coming back, and he's all just run out of life. Oh, this is going to be a good one. You can see with less glue that it's easier to get the chisel through. Oof. Skated. I'm glad it just didn't carve a piece of black walnut out of there. This is where it's really important to have a chisel that sits flat, because when I push down on it, if I lose my grip or it slides, it's actually lifting a little bit, which might be bruising the wood in the most minute way. But at least it's not digging in, because if you had a straight chisel and you're trying to maintain an angle, you would have two big stripes and the top would just be, you'd have to re-veneer it at that point. You'd end up with a fix that's so unnatural that the vintage value of a dresser like this would just be shot. So again, I am a huge fan. For anybody that's curious about this chisel, there it is. There's the logo. It's a Wood River. It's the 1-inch. And I'm going to tell you, I like the 1-inch better than the smaller ones. Even if you're cutting little dowels or pins for woodworking or anything else, I find that it's easier to take that wide blade and come at it at an angle and kind of slide it and kind of wiggle into cuts to flush cut something, rather than take a narrower one and go straight at it. That unless you're trying to get this into a narrow space for some weird reason, that the 1-inch has done everything that I need it to. Even though you would think that for some smaller applications, like even cutting a little 1/8 dowel or pin for some kind of repair or something, it might be easier actually to have a narrower one, just so I can feed it under with less resistance. Because if you chop out wood this way, it's easier to drive a 1/4 inch than it is to drive an inch for sure. But they cost money. I think you can get a set of them for about $100+, which may seem like a lot for chisels. You can go get cheap chisels from Harbor Freight to beat up, or even the big box stores like Home Depot. But I'm doing specialty stuff here. Yeah, there we go. All right. I'm a little bit more confident going in this direction now that it was established that I am all the way across on the grain, so I can feel a little bit safer that it's going to drive and I won't put a huge scratch. You can see there you go. You can see I managed to get all the way across on this grain, which is running this way without putting too much stress on the wood finish. And it's true. I don't know if I'm a marketing genius, but I don't know. I went live on something else, and I felt like I did a pretty good job of doing an evaluation on a dresser that I had before I moved it out of a storage space it was an exterior storage space. I shot a video. It was actually just really nice light. It was a concrete floor. It had a steel wall. It was just kind of pretty. It was kind of I don't say semi-industrial. Again, here's an update on the chisel, just nothing but goop. I'm gonna have to see if I've got anything sharp in my bag of tools that I brought. But I went live, and as I mentioned at the start of this, I liked the video. I was excited to have it be part of the library, and it just never uploaded. Just got eaten by YouTube and kind of put me off doing something. Also, I'm usually busy on after a long week of watching the kids and doing house stuff. I'm usually laying on the couch with the dog on a Saturday, and I'm not doing a live presentation. I think I'm going to have some luck along the edge here where the adhesive's dried out. Problem is that the chisel, as I've mentioned, it just keeps grabbing. And I think I was talking a little bit about this earlier. The finish, this is probably a shellac finish, and so you can use, as far as I know, you can use a denatured alcohol, or sorry, mineral low order, like a mineral spirits, and it won't affect the shellac. You can clean it off, and the shellac finish is it melts with alcohol. And so I guess I could put alcohol under here and soften the finish, and I'll have to redo the finish. But I think I'm thinking I could do mineral spirits. You could do mineral spirits if this happens to you. But you would have some luck getting this to soften up and maybe kind of seep under the tile adhesive, and then actually help soften up this incredible amount of glue. I got to see if I've got a knife or something. Oh, good news. Yeah, I'm looking at the comment about skewing the chisel, and part of the problem is that it's sticking. So if I put it on here, it just doesn't want to wiggle. And so I don't want to twist it, rocking it. I want to make sure that I am pushing it in case I make a mistake. But the goop is doing its thing. Although here's like the wonder tool for most things. It is carbide, and look at that. It is a miracle worker. Absolutely fantastic tool. I don't have my glasses on, so it's the Baco. It's the little one. It has a carbide triangle cutter. And it's been a workhorse ever since I got it. I have its big brother, which is a 2.5-inch blade. And so what I've done, like, I'm in my rental space, and I'm supposed to I try to keep the work on these things kind of light and simple. I'm not going to set up a spray booth in here. But the big one I used, and I just scratched off a soft finish. And then I was able to just give it a sanding with I've got a Festool sanding block with a hose. I was able to sand the top and smooth it after a little bit of rough sanding, where I followed it with the hose and the battery-powered vacuum. And then I was able to put a nice finish on the top of a tallboy dresser, which helped it sell for a decent amount of money. All right, so anyways, we are going to be able to ruthlessly remove adhesive from here. The only problem is it's still sticky, but at least I can get a little bit of a wiggle here. I'm going to readjust. I'm going to move my fine art from China here. People sometimes leave stuff behind, and sometimes there's money to be made on that stuff. I'm going to put, if I can get it to sit, put a piece of cardboard against the wall. Have that act as a break, and then, yeah, try and keep that from getting damaged. I'm going to pick my audience up, and then I'm going to move everybody over here. Hi to everybody that's stopping by. We got 4 people watching, down from a high of 11, but this is sort of like watching paint dry. But I don't know if I'm obviously not doing this for the money. 300 something videos, and I haven't made a dime from YouTube, but it's okay. I come from a family of teachers, educators, and people that believe in sharing. So, ow, just stuck my finger under this one. You got to see that live. All right, so as you can see, I'm able to get, I mean, clearly the dresser is on a cart, and so the dolly, and so it was moving with some of the pressure I was putting on the chisel. Do a glue check. All right, so Baco time. That carbide is so hard you can actually hear it scratching the steel. All right, so as you can see, being able to put the brakes on the dolly also helped quite a bit. All right, I'm going to do some prying here. These guys didn't really provide any help. Yeah. I thought they were going to be real stars of the show, and they just didn't have quite the talent that this guy does. But I've been a fan of this chisel for a long time. So if I had a top 10 flipping tools and things that have made me money, it'd be like furniture markers, a little putty knife, this thing, it's Big Brother with the knob. Make sure you get the knob, it's more ergonomic to use. And there's a couple other things I've made pound for pound a lot of money on with. Obviously, dollies and casters are super handy. And I'm going to say, if I had a just a hair dryer, I don't know if you want to use a heat gun because you don't want to melt melt this stuff too much. Just a hair dryer, just to warm up sections of it, would make the adhesive a lot easier to remove. You're going to see me trying to keep going this way. Sometimes the edges of furniture aren't totally flat, and usually they are. But I don't want to go this way if I can avoid it. I want to stay. I'm assuming that, like, if this is a little high here, this might be a little high here, but it's going to be the same amount of height. Whereas this could be low in here. It could have sunk with a fish tank on it. And I could come through and then just gouge out a huge amount of material, not expecting to do it. So even if you never encounter a dresser that has a bunch of tile on the top, it's still important to understand that dressers, even if they look flat, they may not be super flat. And even like if you're sanding, you want to have a solid block and gently do the edges and try to not have a softer block that will kind of flow over the edge and give you more material removal than you're expecting. All right, I'm going to try and kind of sneak around behind this piece to remove some of the pressure. That way, if it wants to slide a little bit, it can go away. There we go. Man, that's sticky. All right, I'm actually going to clean some of that off. These are obviously replaceable blades. You just unscrew it. You can even rotate it if it gets dull. Put a little bit of a scratch in there. This is usually a really good tool for fine detail work because it will sit flat on that edge. And so for small detailed scraping, it's pretty stable. And then the angle, I've used other little scrapers. I have one from Wood River, and I don't love it like I love this. You'll get, it won't tip. It's very stable. But you have to be careful because like the edge here was kind of catching some of the wood. And so that goes back to what I was saying about these tops aren't always as flat as you want to kind of believe they are. But let's get back to this. Let's see if I'm still in frame. See if anybody's wondering about anything. Yes, Sandy Mesquith. I hope I didn't. Hi, Sandy. If you're still there, yes, a heat gun. It would help. You'd have to be very careful. What you'd want to do is you don't want to cook. I'm not a chemist, but my dad was a chemist. And so you can cause a real chemical change with heat. If you take like rubbers or plastics and stuff like that, if you heat them up just like sugars, they can kind of firm up to the point where they'll get crispy. And so you don't want to bake the glue and have it maybe burn through. The other thing is that there's shellac under here, and shellac will get soft with heat. And so a guy that I worked with at a Rockler, who is just an amazing resource for refinishing information. I was talking to him about shellac and polyurethane, and he said you really can't use too much shellac on for instance, a dining table, because if you set a really warm pan on it, the polyurethane would be fine, but it would turn the shellac underneath it into this small molten ocean of shellac, and so it could create a big dip or flow, or I don't know if it would discolor, but just a blow dryer just to soften it. I mean, if I was in, if I was in Texas or Florida, the problem is right now it's like 40 degrees outside, but if I could put this in the sun in Texas and just let it sit there, or put some black trash bags on it, just let it sit in the sun for a few minutes, I'm sure this stuff would just lift right off. I'm going to show you the closest thing I've had to a mistake here. Let's see, this is probably going to be enough for taking this out. There's a little, almost looks like I put a Sharpie in there. I can fix it with fillers and brushes and markers and stuff like that. That's not bad, but it just goes to show, even with something that should be relatively safe, like I said, it may have a little bit of a rise that I cannot see, and that the corner of my scraping blade just put a little gouge in there. It's not the end of the world. And then I don't know why, but I had a good feeling about this dresser that sometimes when people do something so purposeful as really precisely cutting the tile, somebody had some love for what happened here. I feel it's misguided, but that's my opinion. It may have been just an amazing idea, because they might have had an aquarium on here for years and years. Let me adjust here just a little bit. They may have had an aquarium on here that would have just destroyed the top, but they managed to save it with the tile. Who knows? Maybe it would have sat in the sun and, I don't know, completely faded the walnut finish. And so this tile, we owe this tile a debt of gratitude. But my point is that if somebody worked this hard to put the tile on here, and I could tell that immediately when I took a closer look at it at the thrift store where I bought it, my thought was that they probably wanted to protect it, or they were doing what's best for the dresser, probably. And so even though right now I think it kind of looks a little hideous, but my belief, I had faith, you could say, that someone that in this universe that went to that much trouble, as I scrape the glue off, someone that would put this much time and effort into putting the tile on probably did it, not because it was damaged, but because if it was damaged and it was weird, like I don't know, somebody dropped a hockey skate on it, or lawn rake or something, that they would just put a blanket, not like a covering or something on it. They wouldn't go to the trouble of lining up these tiles and making sure that they were the exact size to fit this top. All right, I am hitting some serious resistance here on the in the adhesive department. So I don't. I'm going to lighten up on the pressure. I'm going to kind of pull downhill as I'm pulling the glue off. This is probably a good time to mention my channel, The Flipping Idiot, and I owe it all to a friend who's no longer with us. But he said, you're kind of flipping furniture, but you're an idiot at the time for selling it so cheap, because I didn't have a place to store the finished pieces. And for some reason, my wife did not love the idea of me having 3 dressers in our dining room. And so The Flipping Idiot was born. So I may have a separate woodworking channel in the future. And I may have a separate MCM rescue channel in the future, or a fix-it channel or something. This is one of the weirdest, most physically exertive things that I've done in a while. It's just so bizarre. I'm gonna relocate my scrap bucket. Here's a shot of the bucket, just tile fragments. I don't know if they need to go into some super landfill in case they do have, I don't know, some toxic materials. Let me move this around. I need to get my body a little closer to it because I'm gonna have to I'm putting a lot of force into this. Now I'm back up to 14 people in the like. That's good. Anybody got any questions or wondering about anything else? Like shellac. I tell my kids it's bug vomit or bug poop. It's coming from a bug, lac bug. But I had some really good luck with these MCM, these kind of skinny legs. Dressers with the skinny legs and the black walnut. A lot of times the shellac dries out or it's scratched, and if it's got fine scratches, if you just get some shellac and an alcohol pad and you just wipe it down, so much of this just disappears. And if you do scrape it off and you put fresh shellac on there, the walnut just comes back to life. It's crazy. But if you ever watched a hockey game, what happens is when you put alcohol, it's the solvent for shellac. And so you get a hard stick of shellac, it's like plastic. Put it in alcohol, it dissolves. The more alcohol you use, the thinner it gets. And then the less alcohol, eventually you get a really thick thing. So they call them cuts. It's just the term for it's sort of like putting sugar into water. If you put more sugar into water, it's gonna be sweeter. Less sugar, less sweet. All that is to explain that if you put that on here with alcohol, you can clean it off with alcohol. I put paper towels down and covered it with plastic, put some alcohol in the paper towel so that it doesn't dry away too quick. And then all that shellac will lift off with the paper towels and you scrub it with alcohol. Stay away from big box denatured alcohol. It's super toxic. You can absorb it through your skin. It really affected my lungs, I think, for a while. Kind of made me cough and made me congested. But if mid-century modern is a big style where you're at, it's the only thing that people buy consistently where I am. Behind me, I have an early American. It's a beautiful piece of furniture. The drawers are awesome on it. It comes with a thank you note that's attached to one of the drawers, but it's kind of this bright red cherry. It looks like something Thomas Jefferson would have had in his country home. And I can't get $100 for it. This thing is going to be a little weird. There's some weird drawer liner in here. It's not the weirdest, and so I'm actually going to go with it. But it'll go for 5 or 6 times what that other dresser will. But having sold, and now this is pretty much all I look for, I guess is the point of that. And so I've learned to do a lot of the repairs on mid-century modern style stuff. And then a lot of people just like it because it looks cool. It's not very efficient. Oh, push it. Oh, no, it stopped. I got the cardboard there, so good. I didn't. I'm gonna drive it right through with the chisel and try to direct my chisel. But there's a great video. If I think of it, I'll put a link to it. It's making an English fad. I think it's Gilbeys or Gilboys. They are a British furniture refinishers, and there's a great video about just take a cotton cloth, take some cotton fill. Where I'm at, Joann Fabrics is a big fabric store, and they went out of business recently. So what I would do is just 100% cotton, a really soft one, and then I would get like just this cotton general wads of stuff put in there, but you'd want to make it a lot bigger. Some people say to make them, and they're about this big. You get a big one so it fits in your hand. Get some 100% drinkable alcohol or maybe rubbing alcohol. That stuff isn't toxic in the same way, at least on your hands. And then if you can find this kind of furniture wherever you are, you just get the shellac, you put it on there, put lots of alcohol, and then it's called a French polish. I've flipped dressers in literally 20 minutes because I get them home, I wipe them clean, I go out there with the shellac, I wipe them down, and it just, like the Zamboni at a hockey rink going around with fresh hot water, it just gives you a nice, glossy, smooth finish in seconds, and it's dry. You could buy a piece of furniture that's really got a lot of little kitten scratches in the morning, and you could have that thing looking brand new and up for sale the next day. So my biggest problem is that I have kids to take care of and a cranky old wiener beagle dog to walk, and so I can't be out there buying the good stuff as much as I'd like. I'm lucky that I've been able to get to my space here, take out some of my frustration on this ridiculous tile. So as long as we're here, and the shellac it's a huge advantage because, like I said, I can clean this off with denatured alcohol. It's different from what's making the original finish work. You can see how it's glossy here and it's textured there. That's the glue. But it's possible that I'll be able to clean this off with some mineral spirits, and that the dresser top will look like brand new underneath it. And if it doesn't, I will lightly scrape it or sand it, and then with, like I said, just that French polish, I'll be able to have what looks like almost a brand new dresser. All right, I've got to lean across the dresser to put some weight on that. Thanks for the explanation. I don't know of many other furniture restoration channels. That topic is fascinating to me. I want to learn how to do proper restoration so I don't ruin important pieces. Yes, I am speaking of French polish. I think I mentioned it. If you're still there, Sandy. Yeah, there's, like I said, it's called Gilbeys. They call it a fad, F-A-D, which is, I think it's kind of a funny name. So we just call it a pad. I don't know if there's a translation issue, but the number one thing I have found is you just need to kind of have an idea of the vintage. Most of this 1960s MCM stuff, it's going to be shellac finish. I think, partly because I don't think that there was varnishes out there, but the thing about shellac, the advantage is it's soft, it's not waterproof, so it's not going to protect, like I said, a dining table, even heat proof. It's not going to offer the same kind of protection as other finishes, but it's super easy to repair, super easy to work with. And depending on what the piece is, like, you know, like if somebody sloshes a wine glass and puts it down on your MCM, like if they put it down on this, once I clean this off, if it's just shellac, you're going to end up with this huge, awful ring on it, because the alcohol, even a little bit, if it sits there for a while, that is the solvent for your finish. And the flip side is there's, I don't know, somebody said that on some Egyptian sarcophagi or sarcophaguses, they found shellac on those. A lot of French furniture's got polish or just a shellac finish. And so it lasts and lasts. And the other thing is, if you do, we're going into the weeds, but advantages of shellac are that if people have restored old furniture, they will tell you that shellac furniture, all right, I had this one white piece that was like plaster here. So just keep cleaning your tool is what I'm learning from this, and it will help you get in position. But what was I talking about? Oh, old furniture. If it has shellac, if you do an oil on the inside of furniture, you know, if you make something, you're not going to worry about it a couple hundred years down the road. But after a while, oils go rancid. They break down and they start to smell bad. So if you open up an old piece of furniture and it's gross inside, there's oil in there, probably. I mean, they probably smoked, because everybody smoked like crazy too. Or, I don't know, they did other weird stuff, like maybe a cat got stuck in there and got scared. But if it's shellac, there's a sweet smell from shellac. I'm leaning all the way across the dresser right now to push this thing just dead straight so I can keep this thing super flat. So the other thing I'm going to say, as long as we're talking about the interior furniture, which is not what's happening here, but if you're curious, I have been able to take, like, one of my better flips, I had a dresser that reeked of mothballs. So I put it out in the sun, as well as some other pieces that smelled like smoke. And no promises, but if you can set up a sprayer where you can mist shellac, you can seal in a lot of odors. We're using a primer to do a kid's bedroom remodel, and it's BIN shellac from a company named Zinsser. They must have the shellac pipeline, because they also make just a regular blonde shellac that has a bit of wax in it. Their seal coat doesn't have any wax. And my refinishing expert said that even if the shellac has a bit of wax in the blonde shellac that you see on the shelves in big box stores, he says he hasn't had problems putting polyurethane and having adhesion on it. But if you are going to do a lot of finishes and you don't want any weird surprises, if you're going to put a topping over the shellac, stay away from waxed shellac. So like I said, there's shellac is like its own thing. The guy that has helped me with a lot of shellac stuff is he does classes, and he can talk about shellac for an hour and still not tell you everything about it, but it's great at sealing in smells. So I was able to buy a piece of furniture for about $50, $40. It wasn't very big, but I could tell it was Danish modern. And I got it home, and it just reeked of mothballs. And so I was able to put out in the sun, which helps break down the mothball chemical components. And then I was able to I think I wiped everything on the inside that I could. I just brushed shellac in there and sealed it up, and it smelled fine. I hung on to it for a while to make sure the smell wasn't coming back. It's actually, mothballs are super toxic. And I ended up selling that for, I think, 500 or 600 bucks. And so I made a like $400 or $500 profit because I was able to finally beat that smell down with the power of shellac. And so, let's see. Yeah, Sandy, if you're still there, a lot of the 1960s stuff is going to be shellac. If you put a little bit of alcohol on it, if you want to strip it, it's important that you don't let alcohol sit for too long on a finish, any veneer. So this is just a skin of hardwood. Like I've said, what I've done is I've put paper towel on the whole thing. I have a ketchup bottle of alcohol. I spritz it on. I actually cover it with just some 2-inch pink construction adhesive, this foam, which doesn't melt as far as I can tell. That holds in the alcohol, and after about 15 or 20 minutes, I come through with the big version of this. I give it a quick scrape. I clean off the goo. And then after that, depending on how dirty it is or how weird it is, a lot of times I just start putting on French polish coats, and then I'll just build a coat back up because the paper towel pulls all of that stuff out. I mean, if it's dry, the next day I'll sand it down. If it's kind of, make sure you don't use paper towel with too much weird texture. But the next day I'll sand it flat. I'll smooth out the any texture or whatever, and then like the French polish. And like I said, you can put like 2 or 3 polishes on. It'll dry in about 15 minutes. And you'll have a brand new original looking finish. If you put alcohol onto a finish and you end up with a white smeary haze, I believe, it's been my experience, that is probably a lacquer, which the bigger factories and bigger companies would spray that were doing furniture. So if you get a white smeary haze, if you go over it with shellac, that white will incorporate into the alcohol and shellac mix, and it will blend in and disappear. It's been my experience. So if it's just kind of, if you put alcohol on something and it just kind of softens it, shellac. If you put it on there, you end up with a little bit of a white, almost powdery look or a little cloudiness, lacquer. But either way, you can fix those with alcohol-based finishes, either more shellac, more lacquer. I haven't used lacquer a whole lot because I tend to think that it's something that needs to be sprayed. It's super flammable. A friend of mine used it, but he did it with a aerosol can. I'm going to try and sneak around on the back side of this because this one's pretty stuck. There's a whole other story to be told about if you use some kind of shellac or thin it out, if you put it into a finish, like there's different woods that get, it'll help seal them a little bit so it's not absorbing the finish unevenly. So sometimes if you do it's called a sanding sealer, it's usually shellac, I believe. There's another one that creates a very fancy chemical membrane that helps even out your staining because certain woods get just really patchy. Like if it's pine and you have the grain going like this through it, that this will be super dark and this will barely take the stain. So there's multiple layers to finishing sometimes, just to be aware of. I'm going to try and reduce some of the friction going into these guys so I don't, part of it's just to slow myself down here now that I'm near the end. I don't know who said I should use the edge, but I do like to kind of stick the tooth underneath something, and it effectively gives me a narrower chisel. I do that sometimes when I'm cutting a dowel. I'll get off to the edge and I'll kind of nibble my way in. And that's why I do like the 1 inch is more useful, and I use it for more things than you would kind of guess or assume. Let's see, any other refinishing advice? I mean, I just like polyurethanes and varnishes and stuff. I mean, varnishes have been around for a pretty long time. I used them when I was a kid, but the number one thing is to just kind of test a spot with alcohol to see if you're dealing with an alcohol-based finish. Try to stay away from Restore Finish. I mean, I use it on like mahogany finish or certain things where I'm not going to make a lot of money on the piece. I'm going to make some money if I'm flipping a piece of furniture, but I know that the people that are going to buy it are not invested in it as an heirloom, and I'll kind of be doing them a favor to take some of the scratches out and just make it smoother. But that cooks the finish, and my understanding is it kind of gets down into the wood and makes it really difficult to restore, do a proper restoration if it's a nice piece of furniture. It's worth the time. So it's a tool in the toolbox, but it's one I kind of pull out for emergencies. I'm not trying to keep everybody here. I'm just trying to make sure it's just really sticky. So let's see if I can get a little bit of wiggle. There's a shark underneath here. Take my own advice and try and go with the grain. Ah, man alive, as my dad would say. My dad's still with us, so he'd still say it, but you know, on a special occasion. So let's see if anybody's got any other questions or so on. Let's see. I've done some French polish on some projects. I really like that finish, like you said. Not great for everything, yes. But it's easy to repair, and yeah, it doesn't smell weird or harmful. Maple, especially figured maple, can be really tricky to stain. I've had trouble with that before. Had to change over to some handmade stains with aniline dyes. Yeah, I picked up a couple of dyes, but I've heard. I don't know if I can flip the camera. Yeah, I can. I'm curious about trying aniline dyes with some kind of handmade stuff, like some benches I'm producing. I call them burritos, but they're handmade, kind of like, they almost look like old. I'm trying to make it like vintage sawhorses, like antique sawhorses, and but what I've heard with some of the dyes is you have to be a little bit careful, because if you're applying them in a line, you can get overlapping stains, which gives you a kind of a weird banding effect. Yeah, I've heard maple. It's so dense that it's handy to have dyes that can make that any grain structure pop, but at the same time, it's any dense wood is going to be usually kind of problematic to stain. But all right, so let's do a quick tour. So there is a lot of residue, but as you can see, the walnut grain, the veneer is all there. There is no obvious reason that they would have hidden some serious damage with the tiles that are now in the bucket. Let's see. Yeah. So, anyways, this is it. I'm just reading Sandy's last comment about trying the aniline dyes. I will hopefully get this to upload to. I will be able to get this to upload to YouTube and put it as a video where anybody can watch it. The yeah, with like bird's eye maple and quilted maple, I've seen where some of those that actually have like a really interesting grain structure that you want to use a dye, and that helps the shape in the wood really pop. There's a term called kind of the sparkliness or the pretty parts of the grain is chatoyance, and that's what gives you kind of almost a silvery look in the wood. And having the right aniline dye can help create a little bit more contrast and give that an almost like a three-dimensional effect. So I've seen that done. My woodcraft, my local woodcraft, they have um, some examples of aniline dyes on maple, and you can see how it gives the grain, like I said, that almost three-dimensional look. It gives it this depth that wouldn't be there otherwise. So anyways, I got to run. I got to really clean off my hands. Thanks for watching. And I, I don't know. I mean, maybe somebody won a bet or lost a bet on how this thing turned out. But like I said, I had a good feeling. Nobody puts that much attention, care, and love into putting that tile on top of here. I'm thinking unless they just they thought it would be a good idea and either want to protect it or it was the style of the time. But I'm going to come back with I'm not sure, maybe just some denatured alcohol, or not denatured alcohol, but some mineral spirits and a scrubbing pad, and I'm just going to try to see if that softens up all this glue. I'm going to show you. You can really see it when the light skips off it, and there's even spots where you can see the texture. So before you go, and before I go, oh, it's in here. There we go. I had a that bucket was where I had some tools. I had some stuff for clamping. I have a French thing where all the feet fell apart, so I have to glue that back together. But I got this. It was a holiday special. It was like $1. I'm not endorsed by Woodcraft or anything, but it was super handy. It has this squeegee, like a softer rubber blade. And so when I did the top on another lowboy, it worked great for pushing the gel stain around, because it's always tough to know how far the gel stain is going to go, but you can squeegee it out, and that helps it spread. It has this little rubber part for grabbing stuff, and I guess you could probably clean a roller with it. And then it has 2 scraping edges. So I'm thinking I might even take some paper towel actually and then put some mineral spirits on here, but we'll see. It's probably going to soften up pretty quickly with the mineral spirits. But I'll put some on here, and then this will be a nice wide soft blade to kind of corral a lot of the goo that's going to come off this, which will also go in the bucket and get pitched. But if you don't have one of these and you've got a Woodcraft, or you want to order one with other stuff you're getting, it's only like $2. And so it's been I haven't used it a ton yet, but it's been handy for working with these kind of big, wide areas that need to be attended to kind of in a hurry sometimes. You don't want the stuff to dry out. But yeah, just managing, like I said, kind of spreading the finish. It's a really efficient way to apply the gel stain. So, all right. Thank you to Sandy for the comments. Best of luck. You know where to find me, kind of. I need to maybe get a Flipping Idiot Facebook page going a little bit, or just comment on any of my videos. Best of all, subscribe if you want to know what I'm doing next. And you can see it's a really cool looking dresser. There's a reason that these are very popular. It does have the skinny legs underneath there. It, it's cool looking. It is a huge waste of space. I mean, you've got room for almost like a whole other set of drawers if you don't do that. But I'm happy I bought this thing. 120 something was a little pricey, but it's a um, it's a real wooden top. It's the actual black walnut veneer. And in terms of selling something like this or reselling or looking out for these, the laminate top, they're not as valuable in my experience, but they are handy and people will come to buy them if you say you can put your terrarium on there or your aquarium or something like that, because this top is going to be vulnerable unless you put a lot of polyurethane on it. And that's just more work, more time, less time and money for you. You can protect it, and you're probably going to get the same amount of money, whether it's armor seal versus just a quick shellac wipe once it's smoothed out and clean. But when these have the laminate top, you can kind of, I don't know if you want to sand them too much, but you can take a black polish, and if you have a carb buffer, you can actually brighten them up quite a bit. And like I said, a sales tool is just to tell people, hey, you can put your fish tank on here, and if a bunch of water splashes, it's not going to destroy the dresser top. So, all right, Starlight Evolution. I got to go. What am I doing? I was cleaning all this tile that was stuck to the top of the dresser. And so I cut it off. I'll post the video, and if it uploads properly, people will be able to watch this and speed through and see how it turned out and what it took to get there. So thanks to everybody that checked it out. I got to run and go remodel a bedroom. All right. Thanks again. And you know where to find me. Flippin' Idiot on YouTube. Thanks again. Bye.